Hello and welcome everyone to the 1-year anniversary edition of 100 Pictures of Honey. I'm shocked and amazed that I've been so honored to host so many great writers last year, and the way that we're starting this year is really special. It's a very different reading than we've done before, and one I know that you are going to love because I know I am going to love it. So in the chat, I placed the information about where you can find the series online to see who's coming up next, and our YouTube channel, which has all of our readings from 2022 available all the time, so that you can check them out at your leisure when you're making dinner, whatever it is that you're doing. But tonight, you are in for a treat. We are dedicating our reading tonight to an anthology called The Long Devotion, about a very important topic, which is mothering. And we're very lucky to have not only 6 readers, but the editors of the anthology, Reddy and Emari Perez, here to introduce the readers and tell you a little bit about the anthology. So from now until the end, I'm going to kind of just be the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, and they are going to introduce their readers, and you are going to be in for some wonderful poems. So Nancy and Emily, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. And thank you, Donna, so much for creating and hosting this incredible series. It's such a gift to be able to all gather together in this kind of virtual space from all of our other 3-dimensional spaces. I want to say like a little tiny thing about the anthology, and then Emily and I will turn it over to our readers. So Emily and I think we've worked together long enough and closely enough for now that I can speak a little bit for the both of us. Started writing our own poems about and around mothering in a time when, if folks remember, and I'll put it in the chat in a minute, Joy Katz wrote a really wonderful essay / poem in the American Poetry Review called American Baby Poetics. And in that she Baby Poetics, sorry. And in that she writes about the fear of a bad poem with a baby in it, which is something that I really feared. And Emily and I think worried about that. And the more that we read and the more that we read together, not only did we find a lot of really good poems with babies in them, we found really good poems with like teenagers in them. And also like step parenting and adoption and foster parenting and abortion and miscarriage and the decision not to have kids, like that whole range of things. And so it was our goal in this anthology to capture, certainly not all of it, because one book can't do that, but to capture a lot of that conversation and to put it together in a way that we felt like kind of hadn't been before. And we are so excited to have these 6 readers with us tonight who can share kind of a sampling of that. And I also wanted to let you know, so the anthology has lots and lots of poems in it, but it also has essays in it, some of which are kind of practical and give you kind of some tips about how you might go about writing, some of which are a little more reflective or theoretical. And it also has writing prompts. So if you're someone who's interested in writing or who might be interested in being interested in writing, the book is really meant to be an invitation as well to encourage you to take up writing in whatever way makes sense for you. Emily.
All right, I'll keep it brief, but just thank you again so much, Donna. It's such an honor to be here. And I'm so excited to hear these poets read, because while I feel like I've been living with their words for a really long time, most of them I haven't heard read before. So every time we do an anthology reading, it just thrills me again. Each reader tonight is going to share their own poem from the anthology and then another poem from the anthology that they've chosen. So we'll get to hear a large variety of work from the book. We'll put their bios in the chat, as well as where you can find them and read more of their work while they're reading. So keep an eye on the chat if you want to follow links for their books and things like that. Nancy and I will really briefly introduce each poet, not with their bio, but just with 1 or 2 little things that drew us to their work when we were putting together the anthology. So we're going to be going in alphabetical order. And I had the joy and honor of finding Sunu Chandy's poem. And in addition to it being just a beautiful poem about transnational adoption, I thought it just captured the longing of a parent in such a beautiful way, and also it spans time in a beautiful way. So those were two things that I loved about the poem. And Sunu has a new book out, which I'm sure we'll learn about in the chat. But I'm thrilled to welcome Sunu to start us off tonight.
Thank you so much for having me in this anthology and in this community this evening. So nice to see some friends here. And I think this is the first time I've read this poem at a reading. So thank you for this opportunity. This poem is in the book that's coming out, My Dear Comrades, on March 28th, my first book of poems. The title is Kashtapurtavannu. So that's Malayalam for, but they came all the way here already, taking such troubles. Kashtapurtavannu. When we left the Chennai orphanage last August, we left our baby. Formula, sweets, diapers, lotion, lice, shampoo, and even the travel umbrella from our handbag. We took in return only an image of her, rocking herself, and a traced outline of her left foot. The floral pattern on my light green notebook could not hide 10 years of dismay, but now it contained one footstep towards something possible. My narrow notebook, like the ones made of scraps from the printing press, given for free to the workers. That season Mary Oliver worked at the press, she said she only wrote narrow poems. We had arrived with one pair of toddler shoes, brown, size 7, with pink flowers, but much too large for her tiny feet. I now carried an accurate drawing of her left foot throughout Brooklyn, searching for something small and perfect enough that could later stand up in remembrance as her first pair of shoes. Now, 1 year later, a little girl in brown and pink shoes skips down the subway corridor on her morning commute from Brooklyn to Manhattan. Thank you. Thank you, friends. And now she's 13 and in 7th grade and writing a paper about like the Selma March and tells me I'm bad at explaining how to make an outline. So there we are, because we're in middle school. So thank you. Thank you for your nice comments. The second poem that I chose is by Maggie Smith. I have a signed copy of Good Bones that was in my office that, obviously is so precious to me, and we're moving offices. So I brought it home earlier this week. So I've been thinking about her. And her poem is on page 117 for Sonali, who's like following along with the book. The title is, This Year, the Role of Boiling Hail Will Be Played by Blank. My 4-year-old son says God made the planets, even Mars. Yeah, God's in space, he says. This is the same boy who played the boiling hail in his preschool Passover play. Each child a plague. I took pictures. His t-shirt covered with taped on red streamers and small white balloons. Some people believe in plagues, I told him. Some people believe that God set each planet in place, each moon and star. Can't you just see him with his tweezers and jeweler's eyes, muttering under his breath and painstakingly affixing? Some people believe he set you here, I said. Set me. That there are no mistakes. Some people believe that. I believe it, he says. Thank you.
Thank you for that really beautiful reading. And so I'm going to introduce Emari DiGiorgio next, and you can read her full bio in the chat. But I will say, just like kind of personally, because her poems will stand for themselves. But Emari is someone who I have known as a writer and a friend and as a colleague for almost as long as I've been a mother. And she's someone who her example in that way has been really important to me. When I was going away for the first time, my kids were 3 and 5, I think. And I was really nervous about it. And I was going away to a writing conference and just like feeling anxious and bad. She was the one who told me, and this has stayed with me forever. And I passed it on to so many other people, that it was really important for my kids to see me doing things that were important to me and that mattered to me. And that example has really stuck with me for such a long time. And we're so honored to have both a poem of hers in the book and also a really lovely craft essay as well. And so I hope that you will check those things out and also read her books.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Emily, Donna. It's such a joy to be here with you and the other readers tonight, and so many friends on Zoom. Hello, I'm so happy to see you. I'm going to read Fallible Beast on page 188 for those of you following along in the anthology. And I do reference Harambe, our dear beautiful beast that was put down. So I do want to recognize the cultural reference in here first. Fallible Beast. In the dream, my daughter, just 3, peers at the edge of the hippo tank, and I'm holding her with the type of grip most mothers use when hoisting their sunscreen slick toddler as she leans in, squealing. But then her weight shifts and she tips into the tank, and it's high enough that I cannot swing my leg over the concrete bulwark, nothing at my feet to stand on, which is why I was holding her in the first place. Their teeth are not tea-stained marshmallows, and I'm spared the sound, a silent horror film, this dream, a nightmare another mother's lived through. I read the story of the boy mauled by 2 jaguars at the Little Rock Zoo, how the crew used fire extinguishers to blast the big cat's back, though the black one had bitten the boy's foot and the yellow his nape. If we're looking for a causal chain, here's where Harambe goes down with a thud. Oh, Harambe, we love you, get up. Beautiful beast batting his eyes and that intelligent stride. When a team of scientists and photographers and artists goes into the Antarctic to study its majesty, they return from the day's trek to discover a polar bear breaking into a tent. They don't kill the bear because he's already eaten all of the food, straight through aluminum cans, exposed film, dragged an air mattress outside and shred it to prayer flags. One man's wounded tone as if to say, I trusted you, wild thing, and you have abused my trust. Dear human, even if you've paid for the land, this single-story house, you rent this plot from ants. And what would Harambe's mother, Kayla, dead a dozen years now, a gas leak at the Gladys Porter Zoo, what would she do? Majestic in her own way, how she stroked her 2-year-old's shoulders and scolded him in a terribly familiar timbre. I'd bet my own clapboard house that she'd kill any man she thought a threat. You, mother, standing at the edge of the simulated rainforest, your fear as real as the scrub grass at your feet. All mothers have failed. Sometimes it's a bit of fiberglass installation spun like carnival cotton candy, 5 fingers caught in a car door. My own child bit by a beach restaurant's pet parrot. I watched it. She was pretending, as children do, that she was cooking. And when she offered the parrot high in the rafters a small plate of crushed shells and sticks, he swooped down and chawed her meaty shin, breaking it into blood, bright as the bird's back. The owner squawked and my daughter cried. They didn't kill the bird, But each time we returned, he was caged, and I was sorry for this too. There are things that don't seem possible until they are. If we're taking sides, I'm taking this mother's, not because I'm a mother who's failed or the child of a mother who's failed too, all of our palm-sized and glacier failures lined up, reclaiming the word, which comes from the Latin filiere, which means to deceive. We want to believe we can do better, but we too are wild, fallible beasts. Thank you. And I'm going to read More Moon on page 193 by Kim Ann Lieberman. More moon. Moon, calls the baby, more moon. Awake with language tonight, she finds moons rising ubiquitous. Street lamps, porch lights, storefronts, the sidewalk a galaxy, the whole city stippled with silver, with toys and spoons dropped again and again to see if gravity sticks. Down our late path, she cries, moon, moon, moon. And each time the meaning turns new. How small I am, how large the night, pearl upon pearl in my satchel of words. As you wane to nothing, I learn to be. Someday she will know light from light. For now, let her world shimmer. I lull her to sleep and then myself, whispering, moon, moon. As I wane to nothing, you learn to be. How lush spun the velvet on valley and field, trail of gems, brightly tipped and dreaming. Thank you all.
Thank you, Emari, for that. I'm always amazed at how like these poems that Emily and I have spent so much time with over the years, like putting them in the document, copy editing them, everything just are so exactly. They're so alive when you really get to hear them. And I really appreciate getting to actually hear them read. Our next reader, Lena, Khalaf, Tuffaha, is an example of, I think, something really wonderful that started happening once we reached out to poets about being in the anthology, which is that, like, in addition to the folks that Emily and I knew and loved and admired, people started recommending all kinds of other people. And I believe it's so hard to piece these things together, Lena, that Shara Leslie was the one who was like, oh, you have to go read her books, which we did and we loved. The poem, the whole point of Lena's that we have in the book really struck me. I think, I don't know, how old are kids now? 7 and 9. They were smaller when we started this, as a poem that really like spans this experience in a way that I find really powerful. And it's a poem that like over the years, I think has kind of meant more and different things to me. And I'm so happy to have your work in the book.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm really touched. This was a poem that I wrote at a transition moment when my eldest was getting ready to look at and go to college, and that baby will be graduating from college in May. So yeah, it's a time traveling poem. The whole point. My first time, like a fool, I insisted. No epidural for me. I shook so violently, I thought I would die right then. No poems published yet, so much left unsaid. Turns out we are stronger and more stubborn than we imagine. I told the story many times. Girlfriends and aunties love testimony from the front lines. But you are almost 13 now, and the memories recede. When I first glimpsed you, dark eyes wide open, I knew something between us had ended. The quiet companionship, the cocoon we both lived in cast aside. Later, with your sisters, you prepared me for this loss. I knew to lean into the quiet and listen, to learn their language before they could speak it, before the exit from wordless music into out loud song. A million farewells follow this day. the guilt heavy wanting to leave you for the first time, craving back some of the space you have taken, trying to assemble the puzzle of self after you, sharing your heart with friends, your adoration with teachers. At school, the principal tells us, we really value independence. We want to teach them how to leave the nest. The whole point is to prepare them to go out into the world. We have been, from the moment you arrived in our arms, giving you pieces of ourselves. Sorry. Giving you pieces of ourselves, amulets from our journey, and kissing you goodbye. Oh my goodness, sorry. Oof, that snuck up on me. It's much easier to read somebody else's poems, I think, than your own. So the one I've chosen to read is by a poet I love and admire so much. This is from The Black Maria by Araceli Esquermay. 8. How did it happen? The boy, the cops, my body in this poem. The body bearing something ordinary as light, opens as in a room somewhere the friend opens in poppy, in flame, burns and bears the child out. When I did, it was the hours and hours of breaking, the bucking of it all, the push and head not moving, not an inch, until when he flew from me, it was the night who came flying through me with all its hair, the immense terror of his face and noise. I heard the stranger, and my brain, without looking, vowed a love him vow. His struggling merely to be split me down with the axe to two. How true the thinness of our hovering between the realms of here, not here. The fight first to open, then to breathe, and then to close. Each of us entering the world, and entering the world like this, soft, unlikely. Then the idiosyncratic minds and verbs. Beloveds, making your ways to and away from us, always across the centuries, inside the vastness of the galaxy, how improbable it is that this iteration of you or me might come to be at all. Body of fear, body of laughing, and even last a second. This fact should make us fall all to our knees with awe. The beauty of it against these odds, the stacks and stacks of near misses and slimmest chances that birthed one ancestor into the next and next. Profound, unspeakable cruelty who encounters this, who does not see. And so to tenderness, I add my action. Thank you.
Thank you for that reading. So one of our sections in the book is called In the World, and we were thinking about the ways that mothering brings us into contact in the world, right, in all kinds of different ways. And one of the things that we realized was happening as we were working on that section is that it was getting kind of like unbearably dark. And so we realized we had to seek out poems that had like a little more joy and a little more tenderness in them. So thank you, especially for the ending of that poem, Lena. It's very appropriate. And so this is one of the reasons we knew we wanted, we were hoping at least to be able to get one of January's poems for the anthology. And we chose this poem in particular, maybe The Milky Way, because it has this like incredible tenderness in it. And the sense of like being in the world and just the magic of it. So January.
Well, thank you, Nancy. It's very kind. And thanks to Emily and Donna and for all of you for reading and listening. That's community, even virtual is community. So this poem is on page 138. It's for my son, who I don't know how old he was when I wrote this, maybe 12 or 14. He's now a freshman at Syracuse. So maybe the Milky Way. My son fills the inner space between my arm and body. We lay in the wet grass in the heart of the White Mountains, far from the glare of city lights. Maybe it's the Milky Way, Orion's belt drifts in a hemisphere so crowded with stars we cannot locate it. We laugh, finger fine clusters of yellow-white to create spirographs in star fields, our empty hands outstretched and hungry for what we do not know. Like a private tour of a planetarium's dome, it is our night. We know the stars are watching us, would cast our shadows into the next galaxy if they could. They watch him as I watch him, light reflecting light, his beauty too dangerous to touch or hold or explain. The love for my son would incinerate us if I get too close. Tonight, our hands girdle the heavens as we write new names for ourselves, wishing on stars that neither shoot nor fall, dissolve into stardust, while the campfire smolders and the marshmallows, unattended, burn orange to black. I think I could still remember that night. I think we were going to Santa's Village or something like that, New Hampshire. And so this next poem is 2 Glasses of Milk by Terry Ellen Cross Davis. And I'm wondering if that's the Terry that's on here. So if it is, maybe she'll say hello, or she was on here. But I thought this was a wonderful poem, and it talks about that tension of motherhood and all the other obligations we have. Page 183. 2 Glasses of Milk. If I were to leave them 2 glasses of milk, don't write about that. Write about the napkin, the perfect triangle tucked around the circle of glass, the absorbed condensation. If I were to leave them 2 glasses of milk, it would be the tension of motherhood and career, poet and wife pulling like teeth at my extended nipples until I was greedily consumed in silence. If I were to leave them 2 glasses of milk, even across my tombstone would be the words daughter, wife, mother. Identities like anchors so heavy I would carry them even after death. Thank you.
Thank you so much, January. Those were really, really lovely poems. Next up, we're going to hear from Joyelle McSweeney. And if I'm remembering right, I think we were pretty close to feeling finished with the book when I started reading Toxicon and Arachne, and I like speed dialed Nancy and was like, we've got to put this other poem in the book. Joyelle's poem, Sestina Gratitude, just struck me on so many levels. It's gorgeous wordplay. It's like heart-stopping sadness. It's beautiful and gut-wrenching, and also its formal structure. We, in addition to looking for like all kinds of perspectives and ways into the idea of mothering, we were also looking for formal variety in the book, and we did have some poems in fixed form, but having a gorgeous Sestina was just a wonderful addition to what was already there. So I'm excited to hear it read out loud. Joyelle.
It's really such a pleasure and such an honor to be included here tonight, and to hear not only, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So not only the poems everyone's reading, but also just to see where everyone's reading from, all the parts of the country. And I'm reading to you from South Bend, Indiana, and the Rust Belt tonight. And just a word on form. I've really never been a formal writer, so it's sort of surprising. I mean, now and then, right? But it was sort of surprising to me that in this particular book, writing from this like total state of bereftness, that suddenly I found myself writing sonnet cycles and villanelles and sestinas. And all I really have to say about that is this just form's habit of looking back and going forward, I think ended up being a real lifeline for me and getting these poems written. So first I'm going to read my poem from the anthology, which I was so grateful to have included, which is a sestina. And then a free verse poem by Shamala Gallagher. So here we go, Sestina Gratitude. Thank you in gold particle. Thank you in wave. Thank you, any zygote worth its salt. Bend down to be capacitated, bend down to take your crown. Thank you, parting membrane. Thank you for the crown that wants to be a noose. Thank you, slip down, cervical vertebrae. Thank you, Fontanelle. You have turned this brain into a fosse. And thank you, scouts, spreading out across the grain. Your doggy snouts now pick up the scent of blood. Thank you, thought, that salty tinsel ribboning the $100 bill. Thank you, ribbone. The brain mints double currency, twin waves at twin across a river. You, my brother, and you, my veiny border. For you, I roll my syndrome down to 0. I stop the clock. A stopped clock's a double crown, and it's a 0, 0, while the crowd shouts from the bleachers, bleached of stain, shouts and shout nots as the ball crests, sinks down to fill the basket like a crown upside down. Water and salt fill the isolation tank where this moment is suspended. You and your brain rock there, sapless as a brain dead babe. Sad coat, trench coat, dressed for war, a drain to drain the wound and a drain fitted to the heart, crowded with gold husks, principles, fixtures, faults, bacteria, you, golden hand that melts the bone, shout at the bullet smelter, 2 lungs hung up in the steeple, salt lantern blown out corrosive, smearing the sea with blonde down. Down comes the beam. It decays and sheds. It lays a lacquer down under the golden dome. The brain in its jacket shines and shines and lies down in the salt marsh, down in the kennel with the hunting dogs, crowded with breath, and accommodates a gold bullet in both hemispheres. The bullet shouts thoughts steeple down you. Lie down like a river as thought spills out on straw. You are the liquor that steams down the seam of the jeans. You, the suture stemmed with gold, stout rivets, miner's hammer. You, the hammer to the brain. You, the footfall of the scouts, shouts in the thicket. You, the crowd that waves its tickets, blonde train smeared with light, trail of salt which marks the battle dress like a wing beat drawn on surge. You, the surge, the shout. You, the battle dead, the widow salt, the bullet in the crown. You, the salted aquifer, the pulseless fontanelle. That's my poem from my book Toxicon and Arachne, and I probably should have read you all of the repetons and all the repeating words, but I failed to do so. So I guess, okay, so they were salt, you, crown, down, brain, and scouts. And so for the other poem, I'm going to read this poem called Final Neon by Shamala Gallagher. I just loved the acuteness of this poem, the acute place and time of night even of this poem. Last night I ate neon seeds of sugar late, the bag from a worn station, the gas pumps lurking outside, large witness, inside waiting to see if the numbers would blaze into a win. I bought my chewy sweet tarts there, the bag purple battered blue, $1.79. Outside, beneath the dark, the blossoms stayed wide-mouthed like women talking late, but I was alone, city at the world's end, time gone to soft dark, the belly child kicking, wanting out for an instant with the blossoms before the dark closes. I drove home, twitching, sweet sick. I won't eat that sugar again. When the end is soon, you can surrender your vices. I don't want to drink. That's Shamala Gallagher, Final Neon, page 81 in your hymnal.
Thank you so much, Joyelle. Our final reader for tonight will be Clarissa Mendiola. And I found originally a poem by Clarissa that I absolutely loved. And then Nancy and I realized that our book was getting really, really dark. And we both, kind of wanted a darker book to show kind of the breadth of motherhood. But I asked Clarissa if she had any other poems, and she sent us like 5 other stunning poems. And then we had a really hard decision to make. But the poem that we chose, we love so much that we've had a broadside made of it. But it places the mother and child in nature and in the world, and nature becomes a reflection of them and they of it. And it's just gorgeous. So really excited to hear Clarissa read tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you for including me and including this piece in the anthology. Just a little bit of exposition. I feel like when you're from a marginalized community, it's important to offer some background. So I just wanted to share that this poem is really about the experience of being an Indigenous mother, separated from homelands, right? From the land of my ancestors. And this particular poem is about being separated really from the oceans of my ancestors, and then trying to recognize those connections as they come to life in my children. So I'm an Indigenous Chamorro person, Chamorro being both the late native language and the term we use to describe the native people of the island of Guam, which is the longest colonized island in the Pacific. So in my experience as a mother, just always trying to make those connections to culture and making sure that we're passing down those cultural traditions and just a sense of identity to my children. And so that's really what this piece is about. It's on page 130 of the anthology. It's called Nearly There. For a moment, we are home. Salt water etches a crude map across the hull of your back, charting a path to your tiny center. This is a brown child's topography. Sand clings to your ankles like so many freckles to prove your relation to the sun. You whisper, "Mommy, we are brown because we come from an island." I pause to revel in the words, how they land on your heart, how they enter the world again in song. Sweetie, we've been floating our entire lives, I say, and here we are grounded up to our shoulders in ocean. It's a familiar pleasure. We almost grasp it with our sea-sticky fingers, if not for the heap of spondylus fragments in our palms. If we let go, we could leave a trail for others lost at sea. I sink my hands into hot sand and watch you walk toward the water, your knowing stride, your sun-darkened arms and outrigger, your hair catching the wind, a pandanus sail. Thank you. And then the piece I selected to share from the anthology tonight is entitled Inevitable. It's by Mahogany L. Brown, and it's on page 194 of the anthology. I was really drawn to this poem because she writes about her 12-year-old. I have a 9 and 7-year-old that are sort of approaching this time in their adolescence. And as a high school teacher, I often try to locate my children and my students and imagine them at this age. So this is inevitable. When I dropped my 12-year-old off at her first homecoming dance, I tried not to look at her newly developed breasts, all surprise and alert in their uncertainty. I tried not to imagine her mashed between a young man's curiousness and the gym's sweaty wall. I tried not to picture her grinding off beat, on time to the rhythm of a dark man-child, the one who whispered, "You are the most beautiful girl in Brooklyn." His swag so sincere, she'd easily mistaken him for a god. Thank you.
I am just overwhelmed with what we heard here this evening. Nancy and Emily, do you have poems that you would like to read?
I didn't prepare a poem because I wanted to make sure that we had time for everyone's. Do you
Okay, I
want to
just
read?
wanted to check.
We just pause here.
I just want to say how lovely this was to listen to as a mother, right? You hit I think so many parts of my own experience as a mother. The betrayal of the body, adoption, loss, the failures of a mother, the growth of a child and a mother, how the roles of a mother change, the incinerating love that you have for your children, the small moments in the largeness of the world, and how sometimes we don't even realize how much it moves us until we talk about it or write about it. And it's been a real pleasure to have you all together and hear these poems. If you don't own the anthology, I highly recommend it. And if you're an audience member and you don't own the anthology, stay put for about 1 second because I wrote all your names down. And I am going to pull 2 of your names after I mix them up on the table. And I am going to provide you with a copy of the anthology because you should have it if you don't have it. So let's just see here. I think I got everybody. So I have Lane, okay, and I have Stacy are our 2 winners, Lane and Stacy. So everybody can see Lane and Stacy. I am going to put my email address in the chat, and Lane and Stacy, since you probably don't want to do it in public chat, if you would email me your address, the anthology will be winging its way to you very shortly, as soon as I can get my act together. Is Lane still here? Yes, Lane is still here. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. This was the perfect way to celebrate year 1 of the series. And even though you can't see it very well on camera, I want to give a shout out to my spouse who bought me a 100 Pictures of Honey neon sign to celebrate year 1. I've really enjoyed doing the series. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm already booked for all of this year with lots of wonderful writers, some of who are in the audience tonight. As a matter of fact, next month, we're going to have Subaga and Matt Gannett, and also I'm blanking, Nicole Callahan reading in February. So I will drop one more time in the chat the information about where to find us. And then I am going to thank you again so much for being here and wish you all a good night and stop the recording.